Rome wasn't built in a day, but if it was, it would have been done way faster than the Roman Empire fell. This empire, which at its greatest extent encompassed most of Europe, North Africa, and Western Asia, lasted for over 2,000 years before its eventual collapse in the 5th century AD. But how did this seemingly invincible power crumble so spectacularly? We're about to find out. The fall of Rome is one of history's most popular topics, and has attracted many theories about what went wrong and why the great empire collapsed.
Ho, ho, ho!
History books typically point to 5 main reasons for the fall: external pressures, internal decay, political corruption, economic troubles, and military weakness. But these reasons don't tell the whole story. So, we've collected even more reasons that contributed to Rome's decline. Here are 10 reasons why the Roman Empire fell. No. 1. The cost of maintaining an empire. According to historian Edward Gibbon, Rome's size was its first obstacle. Yes, there were many advantages to having such a huge empire, but defending all those borders required a large army.
Ho, ho, ho!
And believe us when we say that legions don't come cheap. And Rome's army wasn't just expensive, it was prohibitively so. The constant threat from Germanic tribes in the north and the Persians in the east meant Rome had to keep a large number of troops stationed along its frontiers. On top of that, wars with these groups were expensive too. From 369 to 378 AD alone, Rome spent a fortune fighting the Goths, and lost badly in the Battle of Adrianople. Rome's solution to this problem was to hire soldiers from outside Italy.
Ho, ho, ho!
By the 3rd century AD, only 1/3 of Rome's soldiers were actually Roman. Eventually, however, this stopped being an option as well, since the empire simply couldn't afford to pay foreign mercenaries anymore. Number 2. Christianity. A major turning point in Roman history came in 313 AD when Emperor Constantine issued the Edict of Milan, which legalized Christianity throughout the empire. Historians debate whether this was good or bad for Rome, but it certainly played a role in its demise.
Ho, ho, ho!
Some historians argue that Christianity, with its turn-the-other-cheek philosophy, made Romans less able to defend their empire. Others argue that Christianity was partly responsible for Rome's population decline because Christians didn't believe in traditional Roman values and refused to participate in civic life or the military. Plus, the new religion diverted people's attention away from civic duty and towards the afterlife. However, we can't ignore the fact that Christianity also helped preserve Roman culture after the empire fell.
Ho, ho, ho!
Thanks to the efforts of monks who copied ancient texts. So, it's hard to say whether Christianity was ultimately a positive or negative influence on Rome. Number 3. The barbarians. As Rome declined, various groups of barbarians began to exert pressure on its borders. The Goths, Vandals, Huns, and other groups conducted devastating raids into Roman territory. These incursions disrupted trade, putting more stress on the economy. To make matters worse, the Romans never truly defeated these invaders. In fact, they usually negotiated peace deals with them.
Ho, ho, ho!
Which often involved paying the invaders to go home. Unfortunately, the Romans kept making the same mistake over and over again. They never fully closed their borders to the so-called barbarians, and so they kept getting attacked. And while the Romans did learn to fight back eventually, it was too little, too late. Number 4. Plague. Disease has always been a part of life in Rome. The first epidemic hit the empire in the 2nd century AD and killed around 5 million people.
Ho, ho, ho!
Another outbreak of the Antonini plague occurred in the 180s during the reign of Marcus Aurelius. Then the plague struck again in the 250s, killing possibly half of all Romans. This last plague started in Egypt and spread across the Mediterranean. It was likely caused by the bacterium Yersinia pestis, aka the bubonic plague, and devastated the Roman population. This created a labor shortage and made it even harder for Rome to support itself. Sadly, there's no indication that things will get better anytime soon, even though the Black Death wouldn't arrive until the Middle Ages.
Ho, ho, ho!
Another wave of disease could easily sweep through Rome and deal a fatal blow to the empire. No. 5 foreign invasions. As Rome grew weaker, it became easier for foreign powers to invade. In 279 BC, the Gauls sacked the city, looting and burning it. In 133 BC, the Cimbri and Teutones destroyed 3 entire Roman legions, inflicting a humiliating defeat on Rome. Later, Rome would face threats from increasingly diverse sources like the Sassanid Persians, nomadic Xiongnu and Hepthalite, the Huns, the Goths, the Burgundians, and others.
Ho, ho, ho!
The growing number of enemies put incredible strain on Rome's resources, which were already stretched thin by the cost of maintaining its vast borders. Number 6. Inflation. While the currency of ancient Rome was quite sophisticated, it was hardly immune to inflation. In fact, debasement of Roman coins was common practice among emperors who needed extra money. For example, between 275 and 285 AD, the Antoninianus coin lost much of its silver content, causing inflation to skyrocket.
Ho, ho, ho!
To make matters worse, Rome's economy suffered due to the increased competition with the Sassanid Empire in the east. As the Romans competed with the Persians to gain control of valuable trading cities like Antioch, the cost of maintaining their armies drove up prices throughout the empire. Inflation made basic goods and services unaffordable for many Romans, especially the poor, and led to widespread poverty. Number 7. Weak leadership. One of the biggest problems facing Rome was its string of weak and ineffective leaders.
Ho, ho, ho!
In the 3rd century, Rome suffered from a succession crisis that saw 22 different rulers in just 70 years. These crises not only led to instability and chaos, but also placed emphasis on military leaders rather than civil ones. In fact, many emperors seized power by leading successful military campaigns. This focus on military strength instead of civil administration meant that many emperors were more interested in campaigning than governing.
Ho, ho, ho!
Unfortunately, this trend continued long after the 3rd century and resulted in emperors who were either too incompetent or too corrupt to effectively lead the empire. Number 8. Decline of trade. Rome's extensive trade network was a key factor in its success, connecting merchants and cultures across the Mediterranean. But this network faced several challenges throughout Rome's later years. As Germanic and Hunnic tribes moved into Roman territory, trade along major routes like the Amber Road was disrupted. To make matters worse,
Ho, ho, ho!
the rise of Christianity shifted people's focus away from making money through trade and towards earning merit with God. On top of that, the introduction of silver coins into the Roman economy lowered the demand for valuable goods, which had previously been obtained through trade. All of these factors combined to cause trade to slow down significantly, which resulted in economic slowdown. 9. Natural disasters. Rome wasn't built in a day, but it was destroyed in one. In 62 AD, a fire broke out and burned for 6 days,
Ho, ho, ho!
destroying a quarter of the city and leaving 100,000 people homeless. Another fire occurred in 194 AD, followed by an earthquake in 238 AD, both of which devastated the city and strained the economy. If that wasn't enough, Mount Vesuvius erupted in 79 AD and buried the city of Pompeii in ash. Thousands of people died, and the fertile agricultural land around the volcano was destroyed, creating a food shortage in the region. Finally, in 363 AD, yet another earthquake struck and killed many people. These disasters caused immense suffering and loss of life,
Ho, ho, ho!
severely weakening Rome and making it vulnerable to invasion. Number 10. Overexpansion. Like many empires throughout history, Rome eventually became too big to handle. At its greatest extent, the empire covered over 5 million square kilometers and was home to hundreds of different peoples. The sheer size of the empire made it nearly impossible to govern effectively and maintain control over distant provinces. As Rome grew, it became increasingly difficult for emperors to keep order and suppress rebellions. For example, the Jewish revolt against Rome in the 2nd century AD
Ho, ho, ho!
resulted in the destruction of the Second Temple and the dispersal of the Jews throughout the world. Rome's inability to contain rebellions and maintain stability ultimately contributed to its decline. We've told you about some of the most significant events that took place in Rome. Now check out 10 shocking facts about ancient Rome you never knew you needed, or watch this video instead.
Ho, ho, ho!